In the world of conspiracy theories, there are few subjects more divisive than chemtrails. For some, these strange plumes are clear signs of deceit and environmental manipulation by the government. For others, they are nothing more than contrails left behind by aircraft, a phenomenon easily explained by science. But what's the truth behind chemtrails? What do the skeptics say about them? And if chemtrails are real, then what does that say about our government? In this video, we'll attempt to answer all of those questions and more.
$51 million people entering another
surveillance camera capturing the
unidentified flying object.
lockdowns and mass testing.
Today, that the world is going to end.
We'll begin with the official story. This is what the government and mainstream science say when people start talking about chemtrails. The white plumes left behind by planes are simply condensation trails. As the story goes, these condensation trails are only visible when certain atmospheric conditions are present. The word contrail is a combination of the words condensation and trail. These contrails are apparently just streaks of condensed water created at high altitudes, due to the nature of combustion engines. These engines create carbon dioxide and water vapor, with the water vapor crystallizing in the colder upper atmosphere to create clouds. Depending on humidity levels, these contrails may exist for long periods of time before dissipating. Okay, so we know the official story, but what are the conspiracy theorists saying? As with most theories, it depends on who you ask. Some say that chemtrails are a form of geoengineering that allows the government to control the weather, specifically the amount of solar radiation we receive on the surface. Others say that chemtrails contain harmful chemicals that affect the body. Some claim that this is a form of population control that poisons people and lowers overall lifespans, while still others say that both of these theories are correct and that the substances used for geoengineering are falling back down to Earth after being sprayed in the sky, causing health problems for us all. It's worth mentioning that this is one of the most popular conspiracy theories in the world, with almost 20% of Americans believing that chemtrails are real, at least to some extent. So contrails are simply plumes of water vapor. Case closed. Nothing to see here, right? That's the problem. The scientific community and the military have been openly talking about geoengineering for decades. In case you didn't know, geoengineering involves artificial manipulation of the climate, and one of the most popular methods is to spray particles into the sky in order to reflect the sun's energy. In other words, there's a pretty major disconnect here. On one hand, chemtrail deniers are dismissing conspiracy theorists as lunatics who don't understand how water vapor works. On the other hand, those same scientists are publishing papers about how we can fight climate change by spraying aluminum particles into the air to reflect the sun. But wait a second, what exactly is geoengineering? Are scientists really trying to do something that crazy? The truth is that they've been discussing it openly for at least 30 years, which means they've probably been discussing the theory in private for much longer. Today, scientists are starting to seriously suggest that we start doing this on a widespread scale to fight climate change. This would suggest that the real experiments and trials have already taken place. Some might even argue that this has been going on for years, and the government has simply decided that it's time to make geoengineering mainstream. But let's back up for a second, because we're getting ahead of ourselves. In order to understand how all of this works, you have to understand the basics of solar geoengineering. The general idea is to spray particles into the air to reflect sunlight, allowing humans to keep global temperatures artificially low. As you might expect, This idea has been seized upon by those who are concerned about climate change. The exact scientific term for this is stratospheric aerosol injection. Scientists have pointed out that if they manage to pull this off above glaciers and sea ice, they might be able to stop the flooding and other issues. However, they also admit that this would only be a temporary fix, and that most countries in the world do not have the resources to pull off such an expensive plan. Plans that have been around since the 60s, when President Lyndon B. Johnson's Science Advisory Committee suggested somehow increasing the reflectivity of the Earth in order to fight climate change. About a decade later, a Russian climatologist suggested burning sulfur in the atmosphere, using planes to reflect sunlight. In 1996, the Department of Defense published a research paper entitled Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. This paper suggested that geoengineering could be used not for something as noble as fighting climate change, but rather for warfare. Over the next few years, the subject of geoengineering has become more and more mainstream, to the point where major media and science organizations are openly talking about the benefits of spraying aerosols into the atmosphere to fight climate change. For example, in 2021, Space.com published an article entitled, "Can We Reflect Sunlight to Fight Climate Change?" Scientists eye aerosol shield for Earth. In 2015, Nature published a paper called Climate Scientists Ponder Spraying Diamond Dust into the Sky to Cool Planet. CBS also jumped on the bandwagon with their 2018 article, Controversial Spraying Method Aims to Curb Global Warming. With so many mainstream scientists and media organizations talking openly about stratospheric aerosol injections, doesn't this mean that the conspiracy theorists were right all along about chemtrails? Apparently not. You see, when scientists talk about spraying who knows what into the atmosphere, it's a noble effort to fight climate change. But when average people start discussing it, they're crazy, paranoid conspiracy theorists. See how that works? But wait a second, what are they spraying in the atmosphere? The most commonly suggested method involves sulfates. These chemicals are intended to mimic the natural emissions of a volcano, as scientists know that clouds from volcanic eruptions have reflected solar energy in the past. Other scientists argue that titanium oxide might be a more effective chemical, while some say that diamond dust is the best choice. Aluminum particles have also been suggested, and some even want to develop a synthetic nanoparticle, specially designed to reflect as much light as possible. In the end, it doesn't really matter what they're planning to spray into the atmosphere. The most important thing is that this is a real scientific theory, not just a paranoid delusion floated around on the internet by some conspiracy theorists. And it has to be said that this could be one of the stupidest things we ever do as a species. You see, humanity likes to think it has the power to control the entire planet, until something goes horribly wrong. The truth is that we just don't know what would happen if we ever attempted geoengineering on a global scale. We might end up making the situation much, much worse. This is especially true when you consider the fact that sulfates can damage the ozone layer. In addition, nanoparticles and other chemicals can easily have an adverse effect on light, causing health problems for humans while poisoning our crops. Some even suggest that geoengineering could make storms much worse. Thankfully, geoengineering is just a theory, right? In 2021, the US National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine recommended that the government invest hundreds of millions of dollars into geoengineering projects over the next 5 years, which suggests that they're going to officially attempt this over the next few years. Cloud seeding in areas like Texas and California have been attempted by spraying silver into the air to produce rain in dry climates. However, they report that most of these tests have failed, or at least have produced inconclusive results. So how long have experiments like this been going on? Consider how many secret projects the government has engaged in without our knowledge over the years. Things like MKUltra, testing the atom bomb, and the CIA selling crack cocaine to low-income neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Is it really so far-fetched to believe that the government has been spraying particles into the atmosphere without our knowledge? Maybe some of the chemtrails we see really are just water vapor, but perhaps others are sulfates, diamond dust, or aluminum oxide particles. How could we ever know for sure? Some researchers claim to have discovered evidence that geoengineering is already happening. One researcher, named Francis Mangel, tested the air in the Mount Shasta region and apparently found that aluminum levels in the soil and water were 25,000 times higher than World Health Organization safe guidelines. Another study seems to suggest that aluminum particles have increased dramatically in Pakistan from 2012 to 2015. So what if climate change is nothing more than an excuse to spray chemicals into the air? Whether you believe in climate change or not, you have to realize that a mission to save the planet is the perfect cover-up for nefarious acts. What if the real purpose of chemtrails is something else entirely? Consider the fact that many scientists believe that increases in temperature are primarily the result of changes in solar activity. In other words, the sun has a greater effect on our temperature than humans. It's a fair point when you consider that our star is a massive ball of plasma, allegedly capable of emitting 400 trillion watts of power every second. In fact, the amount of power that hits Earth in 1 hour is more than humanity is capable of generating an entire year. So is this the real reason scientists are scrambling to reflect the sun's energy? Do they realize that the sun is about to increase in temperature, causing a serious issue here on Earth? Check out our video on the solar dark age if you want to learn more about the sun's ability to wipe out an entire ancient civilization. It has happened before, and it will happen again. If our government does understand that the sun is about to start pelting us with powerful flares, then their plans to reflect the sunlight might make sense. On the other hand, maybe the conspiracy theorists are right. Perhaps this is all just misdirection, and they really are spraying toxic chemicals into the air for population and weather control. Regardless of what you believe, we should all recognize that stratospheric aerosol injection is a bad idea. The sun might be powerful and dangerous, but it is also the most important thing for life on Earth. By blocking it out and trying to reflect it, we risk making our situation much, much worse. Humanity likes to think of itself as all-powerful, capable of molding the planet to its will and controlling everything that happens here on Earth. But that just isn't true. There are elements that will always be out of our control, and more importantly, there are things that we still don't fully understand about our planet. Mainstream scientists believe that humanity is to blame for climate change, while completely ignoring solar cycles and other factors. Not only do they think our species is powerful enough to cause climate change, but they also believe that we're powerful enough to fix it. At least one of those statements is wrong. The truth is that we're here just for the ride. The sooner we stop trying to control our planet, the better. That means living in harmony with nature, respecting our environment, and accepting that the Earth isn't our personal science experiment. Whether you believe that chemtrails are real or not, we can all argue that spraying questionable chemicals into the atmosphere is a very bad idea. So will the powers that be understand this? That remains to be seen.